out in Arizona, it can, heat up here pretty good. So swimming became the thing to kind of go to in the mornings to get, a workout in. And I started getting better. And when I started getting better, and then I started doing more and more awareness and movement lessons, and then getting, functional integration lessons, I started catching and getting faster than guys who swam in college.
And with that said, today we'll be discussing how to improve your skill level. How do you do that? And how do you enter into that elusive place that we call the zone? All right, let's jump into the podcast today. Today our guest is Rich Goldsand. He is a Feldenkrais practitioner who lives in Arizona, in the Scottsdale area, I believe. So Rich, hey, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy to have you on the show.
Thanks.
So can you give us a little bit of background?
Sure.
What led you to be so interested in athletics yourself? And then what led you to the Feldenkrais method?
Well, I've always been athletic, and in my younger days, had a pretty good high school baseball career, and I really grew in my college years. So I was really small, and then I sprouted up quite a bit, and I got a lot more muscular. So I just always wanted and always have been athletic. I always liked being around athletics, whether it was weightlifting or playing baseball or football or whatever it was. So I always liked it. And when I graduated from college, I just continued that kind of an idea, and started doing triathlons, and started learning about swimming and running. And I always was pretty fast runner, a sprinter. Wasn't a long distance runner, so I could run I think the fastest I went was like a 4.65 40. So I could move in my day. So a good speed guy. And so, that kind of just stayed with me. And I graduated from University of Illinois in 1977, right? I became a CPA, so I was practicing there, and my whole family was traders. My brother was a trader at the Chicago Board of Options Exchange, and my dad was a stockbroker, and so I was leaning that way anyway. And then I left the accounting field after I became a CPA and went down to Chicago Board of Trade, and I was down there for about 13 years. It's a great place to make a lot of money or lose, but hopefully make. But it's not a great place to make a living, I didn't think. So I wasn't really quite happy with myself down there so much. So I had gotten married, and I had my first child, and we had a second one on the way. And my oldest daughter developed something called spinal muscular atrophy, which at the time was called Wernig-Hoffman. And that was 33 years ago. Being athletic and challenges and everything, they didn't give us a great prognosis. So I just started just investigating and heard about the Feldenkrais method, and through a transition of practitioners, ended up with over in San Francisco with Anat Danielle, and my daughter really got better, and Anat did a great job with that. Her and Russell and several other wonderful practitioners. And when she started getting better, I said, well, why am I down on the floor? I had done okay monetarily, and why don't I look into becoming one of these crazy Feldenkrais people, right? And so I did. I went through it, and every time I would do, when I started lying down and everything, I really didn't have any idea what I was getting into. And then I started getting glimpses of it and really understanding, wow, how this, for me, I mean, I really love baseball. I love the idea, the thinking behind it, and all athletics, but that's where my orientation runs. And my wife and I had moved, Trish and I moved out to Scottsdale, and there's just so many baseball people around here. And I started talking to them, and hooked up with the Arizona State University baseball team, and that led to the basketball team and the football team. And that was a lot of fun. So that's how I really kind of took it. It just was just like a no-brainer to me. It was like, oh, this is, athletes have to know about this stuff. So that's kind of how I went through it. I have very eclectic practice, but I really enjoy working with children and working with athletes. So they have really vested interest in changing. So.
Okay, now you got into a lot of things there.
Sorry, I didn't mean.
No, that's great. That's great. I'm trying to follow it, all of it. And that was your daughter's illness that got you into it.
Right, my oldest daughter. I have two daughters. My youngest daughter was All-American softball player, so I have to put a plug in for her. So I've got to make sure.
Okay, so you like baseball and basketball, I think you said, and you were pretty fast, 4.6.
Yeah.
That's that's just right at where you could play football.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was too small to play football, but I had a pretty good arm, and I could run like the wind, but hitting a major league curveball, that's a tricky subject. I could hit a fastball, but the curveball I thought was coming at my head, and then it would just fall into the plate, and I'd be like, oh no. So
yeah,
that's something.
Yeah. So you also mentioned, like you say, running, and I happen to know that you're into swimming right now.
Yeah.
And running as well still. So
yeah.
So you've kept those two things going all through the years, or did you switch back and forth between various things? Do you still play baseball, or?
No, not playing baseball anymore.
Yeah.
Although sometimes I think I should, but I love playing.
Yeah.
But no, I was a pretty avid runner, 10Ks and stuff like that. And then I was swimming, and out in Arizona, it can heat up here pretty good. So swimming became the thing to kind of go to in the mornings to get a workout in. And I started getting better. And when I started getting better, and then I started doing more and more awareness and movement lessons, and then getting functional integration lessons, I started catching and getting faster than guys who swam in college. And it was an interesting thing, because I didn't really kind of put two and two together, but all of a sudden I would start switching lanes to the faster lane, because there's lanes that have different kind of timing, and you start out kind of like I was on the lower end, and then you start moving up faster and faster and faster. And now I can't swim with Division I kids that are 25 or 30 now, but I can swim certainly with guys that are, and women that are 15 to 20 years younger than I am, and I'll be right with them. So I've actually gotten faster as I've gotten older, and I contribute that all to the awareness and the Feldenkrais method.
Yeah, exactly. So swimming relies in a major part on technique, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah, because buoyancy of the water takes away the like when you run, you get there's a hit to the unless of course like the gentleman from England who talks about these this tensegrity and this buoyancy, this elasticity of running, which I love that podcast that you did. That was awesome. But in swimming, you're going horizontal in the water for the most part, and the water gives you this push up. So if you use yourself well, you can move through the water quite well.
Okay, so I think we've gotten to something kind of exciting here. And that is, you're right. Shane Benzie is who you're referring to. And he wrote the book, The Lost Art of Running. And I went through it too fast one day.
Yeah,
Give me the
sure.
title there, The Lost Art of Running. But no, he didn't do a lot of coaching during that podcast. He talked about what he was doing, and he showed you his tensegrity model and talked about elasticity.
Right.
But just doing that, that has really helped my running so much. And I'll get done. And you see, he was mentioning that a lot of times people have been taught to run very gently and stay close to the ground and all of that and avoid impact. But by golly, if you're handling the impact and the ground forces properly, you don't have to avoid them, and you'll feel better using them well than trying to avoid them.
Yeah. And in my private practice, I've worked with a lot of pro triathletes and age group world champions. And the funny thing is, and this isn't just a triathlete doing this. This is for all of us. But I mean, in relation to athletics, we create these ground forces that can either work against us or work for us, right? And I think that's the great gift of the Feldenkrais method, is that once somebody has an experience of how they can use themselves, and I love the tensegrity model. I think it's a terrific model.
Yeah.
This tension on one side and this lengthening on the other side in a coordinated way is just terrific. So yeah, when you get an experience like that, these athletes really understand it, because they have, I don't have to work so hard. I don't have to work hard all the time, and I think that's a big plus of what we as Feldenkrais practitioners have to offer to
that's a really exciting thing, because you find that Feldenkrais really talked about having a long spine.
Right.
He talked about how if you're using extra effort, or if you're all of a sudden terrified or something, you shorten yourself.
Right.
And then you don't have that elasticity. Very crudely, you could refer to that elasticity as a pogo stick. Every time you jump, the spring presses. And and it's the same with everything that we do. I think I was thinking about surfers catching the energy of the wave.
Yeah,
it's real art. I'm not a surfer, but I was just looking into the physics of it and how they do it a little bit. And it's a real art. So that the timing and you got to really go with that natural force. Well, it's the same thing in running. In fact, it's so exciting, because somebody asked me the other day, will Feldenkrais make me be able to walk farther? And I said, well, in order to walk farther, you have to walk farther. In other words, you have to be. But this is the other aspect. I mean, this is the magic.
Right.
And I found that every step I take, if I start long, every time you take a step, you go back into that length again.
Right.
And it's something that you have to feel.
Right.
And I'm sure it's the same way with swimming. You've got to.
Absolutely.
How do I use the water? And when you find that, I don't swim, actually. I mean, I can do the backstroke, side stroke, breaststroke a little bit.
Right.
I've never mastered the breathing on that.
It's a great sport.
When you find it, I don't know if you as a swimmer might be familiar with Diana Nyad.
Sure.
Now, it took her several tries to swim from Cuba to Florida. And that was because of a huge learning curve about the environment, the currents,
right,
jellyfish, and all of that. And that's why it took her so many tries.
Right.
But obviously, she's got it down, because she could swim however many miles that was in the open ocean.
Yeah. There's a certain amount of, one of the things that I think is misunderstood in the Feldenkrais community and when Dr. Feldenkrais would talk about things, is he said it should feel effortless. And yes and no, right? Like a lot of his things, yes and no.
Yeah. He was big on arguing both sides of something, and it's something we really have to do.
It can really mess up your head. I mean, but in essence, if the movement is diffused throughout all of yourself, there's a feeling of easiness to it, but it isn't effortless. There is effort throughout your whole system while you're doing it.
But right? Subjectively, it doesn't feel like much.
Doesn't feel like much, but but at the end, you know, when you swim a 400 IM, you know that you've done that in a way that it's been congruent with your intention, and but there is effort to it. And I think people get those two things mixed up: the effortless and there's effort. Well, there's a distribution of effort throughout your whole system, so you're not getting in your own way and you're using yourself congruently.
Yeah.
Right? But you're not fighting yourself. And then running or in anything, if we shorten ourselves, we're actually creating vectors of force that are in opposition to our intention, whether whether your thinking is that way, your emotional part is that way. But then you go to a place where I can't move. Well, can't move for lots of reasons, but the main idea behind it is that you're really just working against yourself. And I think when we get that across through an experiential part, then people get it. It takes a while to wrap your head around it, but yeah, I think so. That's a big thing in my experience of working with athletes, is that they get that idea on a visceral level.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can train and you can go out and run miles, and then you catch that spot where subjectively there's no effort.
Right.
Or very, or it makes, there's so much less effort subjectively that it just gets exciting.
And it's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And one of the things that I kind of ask, so if an elite athlete or a pro comes to see me, I just got through working with somebody in the NFL and their season ended. They were pretty late into the playoffs, and when I work with an elite athlete or a pro, this is one of the first questions I'll ask them. And I say, you have to answer this honestly, because if you don't do that, there's not a lot that I'm going to be able to do for you. And I go, well, what's the question? And I said, when you've done whatever your activity is really well, has it felt like effort? And if they're honest, they'll almost 100% of the time they'll go, no, it was fun, it was joyful, it felt easy. Yeah. I go, and do you know how you did it? And they go, no, I wish I did. I said, well, that's what the Feldenkrais method does. It helps you learn how you get to that place, right? But if you don't know how you did it, all you can do is the same thing over and over, and it's mechanical, doesn't really help you. So when they answer that, if they answer to the affirmative, then I say, well, yeah, we can, I can help you. I can help you improve, right?
Yeah.
So that's a really an eye opener for runners or triathletes or swimmers or now football and baseball players mostly, but understanding that is really helpful for them, understanding that they can improve, and they can improve no matter what their age is. Right.
Yeah. So you're talking about something that athletes a lot of times refer to as being in the flow or in the zone.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So another exciting part of what we're talking about here in Shane Benzie's interview, he mentioned that any normal person can go through a learning process, and they can learn to improve their skill, and they can learn, and as far as the learning process goes, you should be able to enter into that process just as well as, or better than, any Olympic athlete. You should be able to enter into a learning zone
right
just as well as they can. So
Yeah,
that's,
and I think I agree with that. I think Moshe really, Dr. Feldenkrais really had a
yeah,
real insight into that. And some of I love your podcasts, and so I listen to them. Some of what people say, they have come about. I would argue is more of a sign of a great athlete. They say, I know that I could stop, or I know I can push through it. Making it a choice is much healthier for the person doing it
yeah,
than just saying, I'm just going to gut it out and take the ramifications of the consequences as they are.
yeah,
That's not as healthy to me as somebody saying, I know that doing this, I could stop at any time or modify it at any time. That's different than somebody saying, no, all I can do is either or, right, wrong, black or white.
yeah,
That's not as healthy. At ASU, at Arizona State University, where I teach, I was working with one of the cross-country runners, and she was years ago. And, I love when an athlete really loves that feeling and then gets hooked into looking for that feeling. And I said to her, so I said to her, what's happening? What is it that you're experiencing? And I love this quote that she gave me. She said, my coaches always told me to dig deeper. And that's what reminded me of this woman we were just previously talking about. She goes, Feldenkrais gave me different places to dig. Because we always have, because of our habits, we only dig in the places that we know. So we go and we go and it becomes repetitive.
right.
If you expand your self-awareness, there's so much more of you to use in the process of running or swimming or whatever we're doing, that changes the whole picture of how you're doing that activity. And I think that's a huge, huge change.
Yeah. So we could, and that's actually very exciting. I think awareness is the thing the world needs the very most. I really do.
It's certainly one of them. I'll say that much. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if everybody was really aware of how they were doing, what they were doing, and what they were doing, we'd have a different world.
I think so. I think so.
And I think Moshe thought that. I think he thought awareness, sometimes in his writing, he would catch that awareness is what the world really needs.
Yeah. And he was also disappointed that people didn't get that. A big influence in my work has been Russell Delman, and I owe Russell a tremendous amount of gratitude. And he would say to me, that was a big disappointment for Moshe, that the people didn't get the fact that was so much part of doing what you wanted to do, right?
Now you're going to talk about disappointment, so I got a little bit on that one, but Moshe, I remember a story where this woman who was, I think, depressed was on his table, and he did a functional integration lesson with her hands-on, and he worked with her, and she got up and she said something. I'm going to have to paraphrase everything, but she said, "What have you done to me?
Right.
I'm not depressed anymore." Right. And he said, "Well, when we change this body pattern, when we change the way you've been holding this depression within yourself, there's no place for it to go anymore. There's no place for it to reside." However, you just mentioned that he was disappointed because I think, and I see this, I think with Russell Delman's work, that in order to achieve lasting results, you have to live intentionally. You can't just get up from the table and say, "Hey, that was great, but I think I feel better being depressed," because it's my comfort habit.
Yeah, and that's a choice, right?
Choice.
I've given lessons, and I've been practicing for 30 years. I've been around the work for now 33. So I would watch my daughter get lessons and over and over and over again. And you really need to know that the way people, their self-image, right? And they're attached to their pain sometimes.
Yeah.
And so taking them too far away from that pain and that self-image, people sometimes don't like it. And
Yeah.
it's like, here, you can recreate it by doing it like this, or you can create it and do it like that. It's really your choice. And anywhere in between is yours. So people have this choice. Sometimes they are so attached to recreating the pain that they will not change. And that's okay. I mean, it's not our job to make people change. We can't. So.
Yeah. So I can go there because what brought me to Feldenkrais was a knee injury. But it was an overuse one, the result of a different traumatic injury, falling off a roof. But anyway, so when I first found somebody who could help me, what he did was get me to slow down a little bit and to do my movements more carefully and that way I could learn to do something a little bit different. And that just killed me because naturally, here I am, a bull in a china shop, and he's taking that away from me. He was changing my self-image, and I really struggled with that. But I did want what he was doing. Right. I wanted to get back to running, but it's the same thing. You take somebody away from. I used to be a pretty big, strong guy.
Yeah.
And
yeah, me too. I mean, I'm still strong, but I'm also really gentle too. So.
Well, I'll tell you. Well, I have that too. I have both sides from my parents. But when I was in my 20s and we were framing houses, and there was a kid who had grown up with his dad framing houses.
Right.
This guy was amazing. He's a nice guy, but he was a year or two younger than I was. About my age, and so we would distribute floor joists, 2x8s by 14 or whatever, 12. And so I'd pick up a couple and he'd pick up 3 and carry them around to the back. And I'd pick up 4 and then he'd pick up 5. I'd pick up 6 and he'd pick up 7 and then we were done. But you see, that was that. Now I still enjoy, getting out and doing things like that. But I don't think I resist quite as badly.
Yeah. I like getting in the pool and swimming next to people who think because I have gray hair that I can't swim well. And yeah, I had a lot of times when there's a lot of people in the pool pre-COVID, you circle swim. And I remember a young lady, she was a collegiate swimmer, and we were swimming hundreds, and she was like right on my toes, and I wasn't getting after it or anything, but you don't usually want to be on somebody's toes. It's kind of like swimming etiquette. You kind of give yourself a little bit of room. And so I said, well, you can go ahead of me. She goes, well, you won't be able to keep up. And I said, well, you come on, go ahead of me. We'll see if I can hang with you here. That to me is a lot of fun. I enjoy that kind of like give and take that little bit. So yeah, that's a lot of fun for me to do.
It can be fun if you're not stuck in it.
Right.
Yeah. If you're stuck in it, you'll do things you regretted.
Yeah, and the videos that I sent you, that's how I met these really excellent triathletes. They were both swimmers, and one swam for University of Georgia and really good. She's a 400 IM-er, and the other one was they were both excellent swimmers, and we would swim in the same lanes together. But that's how I met them, through this idea of this camaraderie in the pool and just getting to know people. So it's a lot of fun in there. So I enjoy that.
When you're active like that, for me, particularly if you're running with somebody, it's easier to get to know them sometimes than it is if you just met them at the coffee shop.
Yeah, because
it's fun. You're out there participating.
Commonality,
There was a man who is actually pretty well known around the area. Did triathlons, Ironman, until he was way in his 80s. I ran with him once, and towards the end, he said, "Well, youngster, let's see what you got."
That's great.
I could pass him, but he got out there and started sprinting. Anybody that can do an Ironman at any age is.
Yeah, I don't know. I know I could swim it. if I trained, I could run it, but I've never really been an avid cyclist. So, and that's and literally where the rubber meets the road in that competition. I mean, those are.
Well, the swimming and the running are pretty important. The the saying is, what is it? The swim and the bike are for show. The run is for the dough.
Is that right? Is that what
Yeah.
they say? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know. That's fantastic. Yeah.
it really is. I mean, what you just said reminded me of Mark Allen when he was trailing Dave Scott. He intentionally swam so he was touching his feet constantly.
Really?
Yeah, he just shadowed him through that whole thing.
Oh, I would hate that. Ooh,
Yeah.
I don't want anybody on my feet. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh no, he didn't. He wasn't going to do that. Dave Scott was going to stay ahead of him, but
Yeah, they were both excellent. I don't know
they
if Scott's doing that, but Mark.
really were.
I met Mark.
So let's. You were talking about both sides of a DNF.
Yeah.
There are people that will just push through things and they just think they have to.
Right.
I think the topmost athletes have some reasonableness about stopping when they need to. But so that's maybe. Well, it's by top. You're right. There's a. But anyway, I think that is a good quality. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. Okay. We'll put it the other way.
But the reason what I was going to say was that I was working with a pro coach, and the coach got kind of frustrated with me and the method, and said, just tell me what to do. They told me what to do when I was an athlete. They told me what to do when I was assistant trainer. They told me what to do when I became a coach, and now a head coach. Just tell me how to do it so I get better. And I looked at him and I said, I can't. I don't know how you need to do it. You have to figure it out by feeling yourself more honestly and accurately. And that brings me to what you said is, I think a lot of these people who don't know how to do a DNF don't know how to feel themselves accurately, don't know how to be honest with themselves. And when that happens, they hurt themselves in an extreme way a lot of times.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And that brings me to something here where even people that are fairly honest with themselves, open, transparent, they don't realize how much the little things matter in terms of your movement. And therefore, they don't realize how much potential they have within themselves to take care of themselves. And so here's something that really frustrates me. And because I see people out there almost begging for help, but they go to the strength and stretch approach and stop there. And so I worked in physical therapy for a long time. So I want to give a shout out to physical therapy.
Okay.
Because I don't want to come across as negative. And all physical therapists are not the same. The field is generally described as strength and stretch. But let's say you had a knee operation and your knee's in a cast for a long time. Well, there are some things you could do about that. But anyway, your knee's in a cast and it's atrophied. So when you get it out, you want to start moving it back into its range of motion. That's good.
It is good.
And then if you want to start strengthening all the muscles around the joint, that's good. That's good. But that's different from a person he goes out and he runs and he increases his mileage a little bit, maybe conservatively, but he finds that anytime I run over 2 miles, my knee starts to hurt. So that becomes a different problem. That's an enigma rather than, I just had a knee operation and in other words, there's a whole different arena there that you can see. Physical therapy is enough sometimes.
Yeah,
sometimes
it would be around.
But sometimes it isn't enough. I know that from experience. And I was deadlifting a maximum of 400 pounds once. And that didn't help me learn how to run so my knee didn't hurt.
Well, yeah, yeah, I would agree with you. So what's the difference between running and I understand. Well, you hurt your knee falling off a roof, so there was an accident, where a traumatic event, right?
I actually broke my ankle. That's what caused the knee.
Oh, okay.
Because then I didn't know how to use my ankle after my knee was broken. It was a problem. Yeah. I mean, I didn't know you had how to use my knee after my ankle was broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm working with a young runner now who's this young man's about, I think, 36 or 37, something around that. And after mile 10, his knee acts up. He says, doesn't hurt before mile 10, but mile 10 it starts. And I go, okay, well, if you don't pay attention to how you're doing things prior to mile 10, then how do you expect to change things after mile 10?
Right.
Right. And so that would be I mean, I think your situation is different. I think when you fall and you have a structural break or something like to that effect, then you have to relearn how to put the pieces together. So I would offer to this young man and to anybody who hears this, that if you don't know how you're doing it, it's only mechanical, whether it's running well or not running well, it's the same thing. It's still a mechanical thing. You want it to be well, but it doesn't have to be. It's the same. It's the other side of the coin. So
right. So there is. Now, I just finished an interview with somebody who spent a year and a half with the elite Ethiopian runners.
Yeah.
And they do not talk about training hard. They talk about training properly. And they don't do, okay, so who are some of the best runners in the world? The Ethiopians, the Kenyans, maybe the Moroccans, some from Uganda, but especially we think of the Ethiopians and the Kenyans. And we also think of the Tarahumara in northern Mexico and the Copper Canyons.
Right.
None of them do strength training.
Right.
Yet in our world, we are told that if you want to be a runner without injury, you have to do strength training and you have to do your stretching constantly.
Right.
None of those best runners in the world do that. Now, the Kenyans and the Ethiopians do a certain set of calisthenics and drills.
Right.
I've seen them do that. But those drills actually, if you watch carefully, those drills emphasize elasticity.
Well, I would agree with that. And what I would say is now I might upset some of your viewers, and I don't mean to upset your viewers.
I'm just about ready to upset some of them because I want to help people so badly, and they're so into this strength and stretch thing that they won't look farther. And I gave a big shout out to PT. I worked in it for a long time. Go get your PT, but don't stop there when you need something else, when you need to get deeper into yourself.
Right. Well, if you, like I said earlier, I said this model of tensegrity is one that I really like, right? And I say this to people who like to stretch. Name me another animal that isolates and stretches. Mm-hmm. There are no other animals that put themselves in a configuration and then isolates and tries to lengthen that.
Right.
So I don't particularly care for strengthening. Now, what I do say to people is, if that works for you, do it. I don't care what anybody says.
Right.
Do it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give you another way. See if this works for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think finding, like the gentleman from England who wrote, who you did the podcast with, the lengthening from one side gives, and the shortening the other side have this counter play and this lengthening happening naturally. So it isn't so much that you're stretching, and some people call that. I think there's a decontraction of the fascia and the muscles in a way that allow you to come back to an elastic place.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you said if it works for somebody, do it. I'm all for that. But it's when it doesn't work for them and
They
they
still
keep
do it.
doing it, and you want so badly to help them, but they just keep doing it.
Well, that was Einstein's definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I mean,
Right.
I think you have to understand that you can only set the table for somebody to come to the table and have the dinner. You cannot make them eat.
Right.
You cannot do that. And I know it's frustrating, but we can only do what people want. Moshe is saying people want to change as long as they don't have to.
Yeah. 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 No, that's all exactly right. I'm just a little, sometimes just right today, I'm a little upset with the cultural norm there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of things that go into that, though, Scott. I mean, the people are making their livings that way, so they're invested that way.
Right.
So, I mean, I've had in a couple of weeks, I'm having one of the strength guys from one of the world top golfers come in and have a lesson, and I know that his mind's going to get blown because he's never experienced anything like this before, right? But you can't take somebody from over here and expect them to go over there. And that's something I really want to talk about because it's really important for practitioners to know that we as Feldenkrais Christ practitioners have an opportunity to really help athletes get better. But if like the football players that I worked with from ASU, I started out when I worked with them in these in awareness through movement classes with very vigorous lessons. And then I brought them back to doing the bell hand, where they were just doing the bell hand, and it was just terrific. But you can't expect, and that's my point, is you can't expect these people to understand if they've never had an experience of it and then work them back over there.
Right. I like that.
One of the biggest errors that we do at the Feldenkrais community. Don't you know this is the greatest thing since sliced bread? No, buddy, I don't. You have to meet them where they are and then bring them to have an understanding of how they can move differently so they can reproduce it. But to try and do that from the get-go, waste of time.
Okay, so I think we're at a crossroads here, a great one. And one is you're really introducing what we're going to, in this conversation, we've done a lot of talking in some of these podcasts about the Feldenkrais method, but we're actually going to see it demonstrated a little bit.
Yeah.
You've introduced that quite a bit. So I think you've really got that going, but I want to make one more statement about the cultural norm.
Okay.
We go to something like, if you injure yourself, you're supposed to do rest, ice, compression, and elevation, right? Well, the man who coined that term, Rice, has already denounced it. He has written and said, I made a mistake. Active movements and heat. For that, now, of course,
I didn't know any of that. But.
Yeah. So we can say a few things about the cultural norm. And
but people get this idea of holding on to something and they won't let go.
Yeah, it won't work for the individual.
Right.
But we can still put out the overall message there. Because that's a fact. That is actually a fact. I forget the man's name, but I just quoted his article not too long ago.
Right. But I can buy into that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and I can also say that I want to give a shout out to strengthening.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to say that an offensive lineman, a bench press is pretty functional for them. They're going to use their hands to push all the time. And they need the extra weight. And I'm going to say some more about strengthening. I love it. I love to do it. It's fun. And I'm going to say one more thing about it. And that is that Mark Allen added it in, not because it improved his running technique, but because he was getting a little bit older and osteopenia set in.
Yeah.
And, that means, he's had a little bit less muscle mass. And so he just did it for that reason. So
Right.
it's fun. It can be functional. Well, it can be functional. It's fun, and it can add muscle mass when you actually need to.
Yeah.
But it doesn't teach you how to do things better.
No, but you can weight lift the Feldenkrais way. I did
Sure.
the whole
Sure.
DVD on that.
Sure, but it doesn't replace skill.
It doesn't replace skill, and Moshe is very clear about that.
Yeah.
Willpower gets you so far, and then you just repeat, and there's an incremental difference. But
Right.
knowing how you create that pattern, the coordination of those movements and intention in a way that you can do it over and over and over again, well, that's an art.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
So functionally speaking, there is no need for a runner who has a good skill level to do a whole bunch of strength training in order to stay injury free.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
But as long as their technique and their self-image continues to change and they continue to explore, they're getting all the exercise they need by training on hills and running in different situations.
Yeah, and you think about that though, because if it was the runner who ran the most, if it was a swimmer who swam the most, if it was a cyclist who cycled the most, if it was the lawyer who was in the office the longest,
Yeah.
If that made them the best, well, then you would be in wherever you are 24/7.
Yeah.
That's not it. It's
Yeah.
That's not what makes us great.
Yeah, that's only that
Right.
dedication to time in your field is only part of it.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, so now I also have been a volunteer coach at some of the running stores and help with the beginning running programs and so on. And one of the things they'll have you do is take all your people through a dynamic warm-up.
Right.
But it's a torturous one because it's just based on swinging your leg or pulling at your hamstring or doing something. Yeah, they're dynamic movements instead of static. But now I'm going to be 71 here in a couple months, and so you feel like you need a warm up for the warm up. But even younger, still, start off cold and just start throwing your leg.
Right.
So the movements that I've seen, you're going to take us through
Right.
a possible and a good warm up for runners using a Feldenkrais emphasis. And all the movements in this are except for one. One idea is something that runners have done numerous times. We've done braiding, cross-stepping, use of the hip that way, walking backwards, skipping. We've all done that.
Right.
We're going to have a special approach to it here. And I think it would seem very strange, I think, to jump right into it. But I think you've already pretty much explained, why we do what we do, why you do what you do when you work with people.
Right. I would just say that unless you know, and this is a quote from Moshe, unless you know what you're doing, you can't do what you want. So
Yeah.
the reason I think you're holding back on the special item, but if you change the constraint, if you change how somebody gets information, then they have different places to dig. And that's my whole thing about warming up. Yeah. I don't think you need to, I think static stretching is awful. I mean, I'm sorry to say that, but I don't think it does you any good. There's plenty of studies that show that. So
yeah, and who knows what the word even means, stretching.
Right.
I mean, I actually stretched to the point of injury years and years ago.
Right.
Yeah, and occasionally in a poorly taught martial arts class, they'll teach you to do that, stretch to where it really hurts,
right,
or where something pops.
and then the injury, and then the recovery from the injury, and funds out of it, and
yeah. So why don't we see if we can jump into a good warm up for runners?
Okay. Yeah. Please.
A mindful. There you go.
Good. All right. Hello. My name is Rachel Zelinskis. I am 26. I am currently a student. I'm studying biostatistics at the University of Minnesota, getting my PhD. I have been a competitive swimmer for my entire life. I swam collegiately at the University of Georgia. And now in all of the free time that I have, I train and compete in triathlon at an elite level. So I've been doing that for about 3 years now. Started in 2018, and my career has progressed pretty rapidly, though my skills are still developing. But I'm a sponsored athlete now, competing at an elite age group level with the hope of turning professional in the coming year.
Good, good. Okay, so what we're going to do is do this warm-up, right? Okay, so the first warm-up is, and I'll follow you, is just to walk 30 to 50 yards forward. And as you do that, just pay attention to how your head takes weight and shifts through the through space, and how you take weight on each foot as you do that. Get to a certain spot that you're comfortable with, and just walk backwards. And just, it isn't about anything right or wrong, it's just about noticing. Okay, so just have that. So go ahead and do that, and I'll just watch you. And now start walking backwards. Just walk the same way you were facing before, just walk backwards. Great, great. And the next movement we're going to do, okay, is this idea of putting our hands underneath our armpits, right? And putting our elbows out to the side. And as you walk to the left, you're going to first bring your right foot behind you, and then as you turn, you're still going to do the same thing, same way, but now your right foot's going to come in front of you. Okay? Go ahead. Notice what's happening in your ribs. On each side, is it different? In your pelvis? How do your shoulders turn when you do that? Yeah, and turn so you're facing the other direction, and now the foot that was the way you were doing it before, now just have the foot behind you or in front of you, just so you change it up. Good. Now stay that direction, and now go back the same to the right, and this time bring the left foot in front of the right. Feel what happens in your pelvis. How does the pelvis move through space? How do the ribs move through space? Your sternum can be a point. Great. Now turn to face the other direction. And now the foot that was coming in front, bring that behind. And bring your attention to the same idea. There you go. Beautiful. Now stay that direction, and now alternate. One time the foot comes in front, and one time the foot goes behind. And the reference points are your reference points, okay? So the reference points become, how do you feel your pelvis move? How do you feel your shoulders move? How do you feel your chest move? What do you do with your breathing? Turn the other way and continue now with the other foot alternating left in front and behind. There you go. That's quite different on that leg. So what is it that's different on that leg than the other leg? That's the great thing about Feldenkrais. It isn't about willpower, it's about skill and knowing how to coordinate things differently. Yeah, way different, yeah? Good. Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so now turn and face towards the desert. And now what we do is the bear hug, right? So the idea here is as the right shoulder comes forward, right, the chin comes towards the shoulder that's coming forward. So it's just this way, right? And as you go back, you do the same thing going backwards, okay? Go ahead. That's it. There you go. Feel when you do that, how do the shoulders move in relation to the pelvis, in relation to the feet? Which shoulder's easier to come forward on? And now do the same thing going backwards. There you go. That's beautiful. Feel the difference going one way and going the other way. Beautiful. And now just easily, Rach, easily, just go put your arms down and just skip for about 30 seconds or 30 yards. And just feel how you do it, any way you want to do it. Do it playfully, don't do it well. Great. Yeah. And turn around and come back and do it the same way.
Skipping backwards or?
No. That'd be too, I mean, could, but feel when you do that, which knee comes higher easily. Great. Now comes the fun part.
Oh gosh.
If you don't want to be in a film, go this way.
What's that?
Nothing.
Yeah, I do not.
All right. So put the patch over your least dominant eye. So the eye that you can see the best with is the one that's open now. Okay? Okay. And now we're going to go through the same idea again, right? Right?
Yes.
All right. And you're going to do just walking, feeling how you take weight over each foot as you walk forward and back. All right? Notice that. Quite different, yeah? And now walk backwards the same way.
And now switch the eyes. Continue to do the same thing. Feel the difference, Rach. Feel how you take weight differently. How does the weight shift in the pelvis? How does the head shift differently? Yeah. All information for yourself, not for me. Okay? Beautiful. Great. Doing okay?
Yep.
Great. Switch the eyes back. There you go. And now, this time you're going to do the chicken walk, right? And you're going to pay attention now to how it feels different when you do it this way. So go ahead. Turn around, face a different direction, and now the foot that was in front goes behind now. There you go. Beautiful. Beautiful. And now turn around and now switch the eyes. It's crazy, right?
It is.
Right? It's crazy. There we go. And now do the same thing. There you go. Feel how the pelvis and the leg, how the leg crosses over now. Is it the same or is it different? Great. There you go. Getting the hang of it. Beautiful. Switch the eye patch back and now do the bear hug there and back, and then there you go. One more time. Switch the eye patch one more time. Go ahead. Beautiful. All right. Now switch the eye patch one more time and skip, but be careful now because the skipping's a little faster, right?
Yes.
So it becomes a little bit different, right? We have a. Did you switch it again on over there or not?
No.
Okay, switch it one more time. And watch out for our buddy,
Hi, puppy.
the big guy. Hi, sweetie. Hi, sweetheart. Great. That's terrific. Now, how do you feel, by the way?
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Put the eye patch now on the least dominant eye, whichever one that is.
Okay.
Okay. I want you to go out and run.
Okay.
You give me your things back. You go out and run, and be careful running because it could feel quite different, right?
Yeah.
And then about halfway,
Uh-huh.
you switch the eye patch,
Okay.
and then you run some more with the dominant eye covered.
Right.
And you take it off,
Okay.
and then you run without it.
Okay.
Okay, and then you come back and you'll tell us how it was.
Okay.
All
About
right.
how long of each?
Until you feel warm.
Okay. I don't want to be too long.
No, it's all good. You're doing
Okay.
me a favor. Don't
Okay.
worry about it. But
I just had the eye patch on. First of all, I thought I would feel more comfortable with my dominant eye exposed, but I actually didn't. This is, I don't know if maybe because this is my weaker side, but I just felt very vulnerable with this side and almost like very thrown off balance and not sure, like was I think a little shorter in my stride with my left side because I was very hesitant with it. So definitely an imbalance there and a little bit more like shifting forward of the left hip when I was landing, like almost leg maybe a little straighter. And then when I exposed that side, it's amazing how much more comfortable I felt. And I was able to kind of get into more of like an even cadence, still definitely feeling a little bit of vulnerability overall. And I think I was probably leaning forward a little bit more, almost to like counterbalance that feeling of not having full vision and just like shifting my center of gravity forward a little bit, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, just a little different, but almost like a bending forward at the hips rather than like a pressing forward. So that was interesting. And then when I took the eye patch off, felt like an immediate, I think a slight increase in cadence again, not as drastic as when I exposed my least dominant eye, or at least I thought it was, but definitely a little bit of an increase in cadence and a shifting upwards. Not like a bending upwards, but just felt standing up a little bit straighter and more comfortable standing up a little bit straighter, and probably a little bit less movement in the arms. I think when I had my eyes covered, I was moving my arms a little bit more, but then when I exposed both eyes, my arms were moving a little bit less. But I felt overall, I think sometimes when I start running, I don't necessarily drag my feet, but I don't think about my feet, and then I sometimes even kick the back of my shins a little bit. But today I felt like I was very much aware of where my feet were in space and how it was connected to like the lift up through my core and my pelvis. So
did you find the warm-up informative?
yes, that's exactly. So it was almost like I was aware, like I think when I normally go out and run, I'm not aware of how my hips are moving in coordination with my feet. I'm more thinking about my feet and thinking about like where I'm putting my feet, and they're almost disconnected from the rest of my body. But the warm-up, I was definitely noticing like the shifting in my hips and how like one side pointed out more during some of the exercises. So I was thinking about like almost like as if the movement was starting in my hips and connected down to my feet.
Beautiful. Did you find running smoother after you took it off?
Yeah.
And you were going with no eye patch. Was compared that sensation, that quality with quality you have in a regular run and quality you had with one eye patch. So those two distinctions.
Yeah. So quality during a regular run, I would say improved. I think when I usually go, especially during the first like 15 minutes of a run, it takes me a while to get that cadence increase and to kind of get that connection feeling through my body. But overall, I felt a lot more connected to my body, like that hip connection that I was mentioning, instantly. Sometimes I don't find it until I start, like I'm halfway through a run and then I kind of feel like I hit a groove, right. But I almost felt like I was in a groove earlier, and that I wasn't kind of feeling any dragging of my feet. Like sometimes, as I mentioned, I'll either kick myself or my toes will drag on the ground, and I didn't have any of that, and an increased cadence. And then, the eye patch compared without the eye patch compared to with the eye patch felt a lot smoother as well. So just more, as I mentioned, I don't think I was swinging my arms as much, so it was more of like a stability throughout, more of my upper body, but then was reflected in my lower body, because I think when I was swinging my arms, my hips were also moving a little more, so I was more stable just all around.
Would you think it would be something that you would look when you were out there? Were the reference points that you gained while you were doing the warm-up available to you while you were out there warming up?
What do you mean by reference points?
In other words, you could feel your hips move or your hips move here when you're doing the warm-ups. When you're out there, you say, are my hips moving? Are my shoulder? Where's my head in relation to my feet? Was that available to you?
Yes.
In other words, could you find new places to dig?
Yes, especially when I was wearing the eye patch. I think that's when I started noticing it. Like I was saying, I think my arms were moving, and then I noticed how that was reflecting in a little bit, especially when I had my left eye covered, and I was noticing that I was like uneven in my cadence, and that I was kind of like hitting the ground a little sooner and not like extending my leg, just like a little short in this leg. Yeah. And was feeling that like reflected in like an outward extension of my right hip. Nice. And so then when I felt that, it didn't feel good. So then, I tried to fix it a little bit. And then especially when I switched eyes and then ultimately took it off, I was trying to notice, that I don't like it when my hips go side to side and wobble out too much. It doesn't feel good. Yeah. And I don't think I noticed that. But when I was doing, especially like the bird walk and noticing my hips going side to side.
Yeah. So most, I think I mentioned this earlier, but most athletes, when I ask, or it doesn't have to be an athlete, but most, I'll use athletes for this example. When I ask them, when you've done your whatever it is, golf, tennis, swimming, football, when you've done it really well, has it ever felt like work? And every single one says, if they're honest, goes, no, I was in the flow, I was easy, it was, so forth and so on. Okay. But we lose, because of our coaches and our teachers and our ability to take ourselves away from ourselves, we lose looking for that quality. And when we look for the quality, right? When we look for the quality, that ease comes back. Now, it doesn't mean that there's no effort. It just means that the effort is diffused throughout all of ourselves, so it becomes a feeling of lightness and easiness, of congruency, everything working all together, all at once, thinking, feeling, sensing, and acting. You know those words as a Feldenkrais practitioner, right? Right. And so I think it's really important that when you train to look for that quality. You don't train for the goal. And when you get, so how do you do that? Well, all the things that you see on the videos, everybody else does. I mean, there's nothing new there, except, well, I think the eye thing is new. But what they don't do is they don't look for the quality. So when you change the eye, or how you take in proprioceptively the world, then you have a chance to feel yourself differently. And then when you do, then you're looking for the quality. When you change that environment, then you're looking for the quality. And then you have an opening, an opportunity for the athlete at that time to notice how they either create the quality or they don't. Moshe talks about it. He goes, it doesn't make a difference if you do it well or you don't do it well. If you don't know how you're doing it, it's mechanical.
Yeah.
And if it's mechanical, it's not reproducible.
But like that thing you brought up earlier, that, talking about athletes being in the zone, and you ask them, do you know how to get there?
Right. And they don't.
Yeah.
They don't. And I think really it's so important for people to understand it's not, now let me say this, to go in the direction of being in the zone is not a mystery.
It's not a what?
Mystery.
Oh, yeah.
Being in the zone is mysterious sometimes, and it can be very, very clear. But how you get there isn't a total mystery. It's bringing your intentions and your actions and your thoughts in a congruent way and inhibiting the stuff that gets in your way to get there. But if we don't change the parameters and how we sense ourselves, we can never, and that's what we call that's the quality, that being in the zone is. So if you change the parameters of how somebody senses themselves, then they can find that quality. Then they can recognize how they get in there. And you see Rachel say, my hip kept on sliding out, and I could feel that. So I did things in my shoulders that I was able to find, and Adrian was, well, my cadence got quicker, right? So all of those things are a part of the quality. But if you don't look for the quality, you can never find it. Well, you find it by happen chance, but you don't find it because you're looking for it, so.
That's right. You could accidentally find it, just like the time that I kicked a football and it went twice as far as it normally does, and it just felt right.
Right. That's right. I'm working with an NFL player, and he knows, he goes, now I know when I'm there, and I know I might not be always there, but I'm going towards that goal all the time, not by trying to get to the goal, but by trying to use the quality to get to the goal.
Yeah.
And that's, you wanted to mention something about the eye patch.
Yeah, the eye patch. So that's, like we said, braiding, cross-stepping, walking backwards, all those things are things that you might do. And in fact, you might, as a runner, be taught to overdo them. You just throw your leg to the side, and
right.
Hope your pelvis follows.
Right.
But those are all kind of familiar. But the eye patch would not normally be familiar to runners. But so maybe you can comment a little bit on how the eyes control our movement, and how Moshe even talked about the tyranny of the eyes, I think.
I won't because it's not coming back to me so quickly about the tyranny of the eyes, but let me comment about, it's not just the eyes. So some people really get nauseous. Like I use goggles when I swim, of course, right? But I have, when I'm warming up, I have one goggle that's painted over.
Oh.
And it's painted over in black, so it blacks out the whole, and I switch the eyes around when I'm warming up, so I can feel I could feel my length, I could feel where my arms are, my hands are entering, you feel so much more. When you change this big of an input to the brain's wiring, it gives you a greater opportunity to sense yourself in a new way, in a different way, right? And that's the reason for that. And not always, but a vast majority of the time, I'll always cover the least dominant eye first. I want the nervous system to feel as safe as it can. So the eye that you see better with, I want open while you do that. And then I go to the opposite eye and then feel the difference. And then, you take it off and then you run without it. And it's huge difference as you see in the videos. The other thing that I do is a lot of people, I wear headphones when I run. But if you just take one of those like sleeping ear plugs, right? And you put them in an ear and you do the same thing instead of the eye patch, because some clients I've had just go, I get nauseous. And I go, okay, no problem. If you close off one ear while you're doing it, it's similar in the fact that you hear birds over here, but you don't hear them over here, right? Or you hear your footstep as you're doing it over here on the right side, but you don't hear it quite the same on your left. So then the information gets channeled differently into the brain, and then you have an opportunity to feel the pattern and how you're changing whatever it is, whether you're swimming, running, cycling, playing tennis, throwing a 100-mile-an-hour baseball. It doesn't make it's still a pattern, and you have this opportunity to sense that. If you don't, Einstein's theory of insanity, right, is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, here you go. You get to change it so you don't get the same result. The genius about Moshe was that once you know how you do it, you can reproduce it or go in the direction of reproducing it.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're doing, you can't do what you want.
That's right.
And that's the thing about the eye and the ear and the information to the brain. That's why I like it so much. And I've never had it where it hasn't made a dramatic difference to the person.
Yeah.
And in the improvement of whatever we're working with.
Yeah. So I have a tremendous difference between my left and right eye. My left eye can only see up close and my right eye sees far and so on. So together I'm used to using them like that.
Right.
But even if my eyes were almost the same in terms of acuity, I would still notice the difference by covering a left or a right because of how the brain works.
Yeah. I would be curious if you go out and try that. Go to your local drugstore and get it's just like an eye patch, and go and try it.
I have tried it with closing one eye and then the other, but I'll have to go out and get the.
Yeah. So the reason I don't suggest that is that when you close the eye, it contracts the face, which contracts the neck, which then if you're running, it's going to limit the way that you're going to move through the run. Yeah. And then you're going to take weight differently and everything changes. So if you just have the patch on there, just like that, you don't have to do that. And then it requires the organization of the whole system to be different.
Yeah. So this is very fascinating because the eyes are very powerful. And even it is said that as you get older, your balance tends to become more visually dependent. So another thing I've noticed, with my running lately is that if you want that elasticity that we talked about earlier, in that long spine, you want to be up.
Yeah.
Then you have to rely on proprioception with your feet a lot. You have to disassociate your eyes from looking at your feet.
Yes.
As much as you can. You want to be safe, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But you have to do that. So this thing of improving your proprioception by changing your vision a little bit. And Moshe used all kinds of constraints, not only with vision, but sometimes he would have you do a particular thing you had to hold while you're doing something else. So
right.
Now you have to learn a new way to do it.
Right. But you have to. And so that's exactly what I'm speaking to. When you change the input, you have to learn. We don't have to, but we create the constraints that the system is looking to do something. So it's going to find another way to do it.
Right. So I think a lot of people don't realize how powerful the eyes are. And
right.
They say, look where you're going. Well, that's a good idea. But you can, a football player, he can look over here maybe at the quarterback while he's moving this way with the receiver. They've learned to do those things.
Yeah, driving a car. You're driving a car, right? You gotta look here, but you gotta look there too, right? You're changing lanes this way, right? The eyes have to be forward and turn. I mean, you have to be able to differentiate them. I tell people that unless you interrupt the pattern, the lights turn on like turning on a light, like Christmas lights. They all light up in the same way because that's the way that you're telling them to light up. But if you don't change that,
right, you can't learn anything new. Yeah.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And so the two women, I mean, world champion 3 times in her age group as a triathlete, and wonderful woman, great athlete, and it just the change in doing it one time, right? Imagine what happens when you do it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Right. And so then you change it up, right? Then you do it in your ears. Then one week you do it in your ears. One time you do it with your eyes, right? And it changes everything. So the videos are terrific. I hope people watch them. As you can watch the responses first if you don't have enough time, and then watch the full thing. But I can't say enough about that work, and I don't know anybody else who's doing that other than me when working with certainly elite athletes. But just practitioners, clients in general, right? I use it all the time, and I think it's invaluable.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very interesting. So the feeling, what you're doing here gives you a chance to inhibit your old habits, where if you were just left to do that on your own, it could be very difficult to distinguish what's an old habit from.
Yeah. And people, some of our colleagues, I don't know if they get this or not. The thing you just said is, inhibiting your old habits. But people sometimes have a really hard time sensing the old habit, have a visceral sense of your old habit. When you change either the hearing or the vision, it's a lot easier for somebody to have a sensorial experience that helps them. Oh, when I was running like this, I didn't feel that before. Well, now I do. Let me go back and feel how I did it with both eyes. Oh my God, I do it completely different. Then you have a strategy, to take into something else. I mean, you hear so many people go, well, I have a great lesson. I get off the table, and then tomorrow I go and do the activity and I lost it. Because they don't know how they reproduced it when they had the lesson.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you don't know that, then, well, you're stuck.
Yeah. And that's one thing nice about awareness and movement lessons, which are the verbally guided lessons, is that they kind of leave you, a whole room full of people and you're all hearing the same instructions, and they kind of leave you on your own to figure out what you're doing. And so whatever value you got from that, you kind of know what was going on with you to get it.
Yeah.
So you should be able to go back to it at least that far. And
well, you would hope. Hope. Sometimes, people fall.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's true. Sometimes you have no idea what you're doing. What
does he want me to do?
That happens a lot.
I can't do that.
Yeah. I know.
Anyways, yeah, I can't say enough about that, about proprioception and changing that during the warm-up, because once you go out for the run, if you haven't done that before in the warm-up, you're already doing the pattern. And if you're already doing the pattern, it's not going to help.
So if you know what you're doing, you can do what you want. And the converse, the same thing. So this is very interesting because it carries over into everything.
Right.
Let's say you're doing an exercise. Let's start with it. Let's say it's the difference between having somebody fix you and learning how to improve your own skill level.
Yes.
And it carries over into everything. Let's start with exercise. It carries into that. So if you're just doing an exercise, I've seen so many people, they'll just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, done. And
What did I do?
Or I have seen other people that are very careful about, exactly how am I doing this? Did I maintain my balance through the whole thing? And so it's a little bit more inward focus. And then you go on to technique, and you'll have people, they'll give you 5 steps to good running. And it'll be on one page. It's called, they have names for it, but different systems.
Right.
But so you're supposed to do this and this and this and this, and then you've got good running for them. So that's the outward.
Right.
Give me these clues and I'll do them. But
Right.
then there is also the awareness of what you're talking about here, that we have to have all these cues, and we have to even all these cues help us develop our kinesthetic sense more and our proprioception, which tends to go away very, very easily.
Yeah.
So there's always that difference. And so there's a big difference between running technique and running awareness.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I would take running awareness in a heartbeat over running technique.
Yeah.
And you're old enough. You remember the Fosbury flop?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, he's a guy who coordinated himself differently than we used to be the scissors and going over, right? And then he goes, hey, guess what? The way I have to do it is like this. And nobody else was doing it like that.
No, he was following he was doing a lot of little experiments and feelings and following what worked best for him.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's exactly my point. You can't do that unless you can have a really acute, well, you can, but it's much more potent if you have a much more acute sense of yourself while you're doing it.
Yeah.
And that's a great example.
It is. I found that to be such a good example that I used it in my book. But I do remember him well, yeah. And it used to be kind of, it wasn't fully accepted right away, and he was made fun of. The Fosbury flop is actually kind of making fun of him.
Oh, right. But I didn't know that. I didn't know that, because I remember being in like 3rd grade when that came out, right?
I'm a little bit older than you. Just a little.
You're about 6 or 7 years older than I am.
Yeah. And so it wasn't fully accepted right away.
Right.
But so here he went to the Olympics, and if I have this right, I believe I watched a lot and listened a lot on that the German team told him he was wrong. He was doing it wrong and he couldn't win. So he won the gold medal.
By the way, I did it right and I won.
Yeah. You are doing it wrong. But in terms of the physics, it's actually been proved that this is a better way to get your entire center of gravity over the ball.
And I think they'll improve it some more somewhere else along the line. Of course, it has to change. It's not going to be a static thing. Movement is not a static thing, so it will have to be changed and it'll be improved. I know I don't think I will, but but somebody along the
the conversation. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.